The intention of justice is to see that the guilty people are proven guilty and that the innocent are freed. Only we have a problem here.
So she successfully hid Josh for a while. But Bloodworth is absolutely right on the money. He is the closest thing that she has to a safe figure, a confidant, someone that she is willing to ask or trust with her deepest, darkest secrets. In this moment, I think she's contemplating, can I trust him? And ultimately makes the right choice not to disclose. But it sounds like she came as close as she ever could have to questioning whether she should tell him or could tell him. And that this was, at least in part, an effort to process her feelings exactly the way that he is suggesting.
And never mind that that's a highly selfish question. She's worried about working through her feelings.
100%.
Never mind Josh Grossman's feelings on having had to have killed in service of his country. It was her feelings.
It's a good point. And you can see that he's a wounded animal. I mean, if you don't see that, I don't know what to tell you. Part of what makes Josh Grossman a safe figure for Kouri is that he is wounded. He is a man who feels things deeply. And if he's been in active combat where he had to kill somebody, which is the implication that he makes on the witness stand, you could imagine how difficult that would be for this man to live with, and why it might incentivize him to be more of a drifter, to keep himself separate from the world outside. Imagine how sensitive he appeared to all of us. Walking around with that level of sensitivity as a man in this world, you got to keep things at a safe distance from you because you do feel things so deeply. And trauma is a very real thing. I would argue that everybody has it, but obviously to significantly varying degrees.
The walk the dog letter. There's a lot to unpack in this. But right now, let's unpack the fact that Kouri Richins says Eric gets pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico. She goes on to talk and says, Eric finally told me and asked if Carmen could get him some pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico. Some refers back to pain pills in Mexico from fentanyl.
Exactly. Yes, close.
Sorry, pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico.
Correct.
Kouri Richins knows 4 months after she's been arrested for Eric Richins' murder, a year and a half after she murdered him,
she's got to connect him to the fentanyl.
She knows that she bought fentanyl, and she has to explain it.
Mm-hmm.
And how does she explain it? A year and a half after murdering Eric Richins, she blames it on Eric.
Yeah.
Oh, I bought it for Eric.
Now, this was something that my sister argued was plausible. Well, I could see a world where this was true and she was not making up a story, but reminding her brother the story to tell investigators or to testify to. I could see, okay, fine. You could make that argument. The defense tries to make that argument. There's so many problems with that argument, though. Number one, fentanyl is not hydrocodone. Fentanyl is not even oxycodone. Fentanyl is a specifically dangerous drug that nobody in their right mind on planet Earth is going to spontaneously, out of the blue, opt to acquire. So if you could prove, in order for this to be true, you would have to prove that Eric Richins has a long history acquiring narcotic painkillers. You would have to go back and say, and this can't, we're not talking about red devils, okay? Which in my mind, I always thought red devils were some form of amphetamine, like speed, like over-the-counter speed, like the stuff you get at gas stations, kind of, right? I don't know what the reference was in high school. Who cares? Eric Richins is 39 years old. What he did in high school is no longer relevant to anyone. But you would have to prove that sometime in the last, 2 years, he has a history of acquiring opioid painkillers. Now, we're led to believe that Eric Richins had pain because of his Lyme disease. Okay, well, where's the evidence that there were prescription painkillers of any kind that were prescribed to Eric? Prosecutor tells us that they went, the cops end up telling us that they went into their opioid pain management computer system, statewide computer system, and Eric Richins isn't in there, which means that at no time in the recent past has Eric Richins been acquiring, on the books, opioid painkillers. Now, a guy like this is unlikely to just be hitting the streets for narcotics, right? Like, it is so extraordinarily unlikely. And there is a long distance between alcohol and like shots, taking some lemon drop shots, by the way, or Moscow Mules, ginger beer drinks, and fentanyl specifically and by name. Like, there's no way that Eric Richins, without a documented history of painkiller use, is going to Mexico or is asking Kouri to acquire fentanyl. There's no way. What is the one thing that the whole world, all of us, know about fentanyl? There's only one association with fentanyl for all of us, right? Well, maybe not all of us, but the majority of us. And that is that street fentanyl is lethal and will kill you. Eric Richins had the same belief system, I promise. So if he had pain, he wasn't seeking street grade fentanyl from a dealer. He's probably going to go to the doctor and say, I have pain. What should I do about it? And we're going to see that on paper. And if there was a history of that on paper, then we could make the argument that, okay, maybe he had built a crazy tolerance to these drugs and was, looking for something more powerful. Fine. There's no evidence of that. And because Kouri does not write this letter like a normal letter. She doesn't just say, hey, Mom, remind Ronnie of that time when Eric mentioned blah, 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 blah. She doesn't say that. It says, walk the dog. And then it says, but before you do, commit it to memory. So she's telling us what walk the dog means right up front. First thing, walk the dog. And before you do, commit this to memory. Tell Ronnie he has to testify. Then she writes this whole story. And it's not written in the way that her brother already has this in his mind. Instead, she's saying, tell him to memorize what I am saying and then throw it away. It's not written like a reminder. Remember that time when Eric was over for football and he mentioned la 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 la. He told me about it after the fact. That's not the way it's written. This is a story that she's trying to get her brother to tell. And the intent is to give this letter to her lawyer to give to the mother so that it never goes through the proper channels and is confiscated by investigators or jail staff or this guy, the prosecutor. Craziness.
That's the sum of the evidence. Her self-serving statement asking her brother to testify falsely that she brought it from Eric.
Brought it for Eric, yeah.
For Eric.
Yeah, he's right.
A year and a half after she murdered.
100%.
Kouri Richins did not tell the 911 dispatcher, hey, I just bought some fentanyl for Eric.
Right.
She didn't tell
Medical
paramedics,
examiner.
he might be dying from the fentanyl I just bought for him.
Right. Right.
He didn't tell the deputies that responded. He didn't tell Detective Woody.
No.
He didn't tell Dr. Ulmer. Didn't tell Christensen. Didn't tell her friends. Didn't tell her family. All the off-ramps she had to, the opportunity to take to say, hey, I bought the fentanyl for Eric.
Right.
She doesn't, because it did not happen.
That's right. He's right. Correct.
She did not concoct this story until a year and a half after she killed him.
Yep. Excellent point. Excellent point. Such an important point. New York City, you guys, never stops. Nope. This is really happening. Somebody's just laying on the horn right outside my window. Okay. So, yep, this is an excellent point. Good for him for pointing it out. There is no time where at any point she calls up the ME, she calls up an investigator or tells her friends or anybody, you know, for the last few months, I had been getting painkillers for Eric from Carmen Lauber. Now, that wouldn't have worked because at the same time, and the defense is going to point this out, Eric is given a prescription for naltrexone. And I don't know what the dates are on that prescription. But what I can tell you is that if he was given a prescription of naltrexone at any time during the time that Kouri is buying pills for Eric, those drugs would not do anything. So that story would have been undermined by the drugs he was taking. Now, the defense is going to try to argue the opposite, that those drugs are proof that Eric was addicted to painkillers, not realizing that that drug is given for cravings because it blocks opioid receptors and drugs that administer opioids to the brain from working. You can't even make it up.
And it is a story. It's a fake story that she wants her brother to testify to.
100%.
There are, of course, other inaccuracies. Kouri Richins in the Orange Notebook writes, self-servingly, When the EMT walked up to me and said he didn't make it, we did all we could, I lost it, I immediately ran to the bathroom. This is the video of when the EMT walked up to her.
Yay, he shows it. Yay.
Yes, Dad. Kids are in that door.
Right. So we went through this over the weekend. I spent a lot of time pointing out to all of you precisely this, and it's what he does here. He not only points out the discrepancies between what she says in the notebook and what happens when she learns that Eric has passed, but he also shows us how Kouri Richins behaves differently when she learns of Eric's passing, and the way that Kouri feels guilt and shame interfacing with the kids and interfacing with Eric's dad. And that's exactly what we spent all that time going over, I think, this weekend and even before that. So kudos to this prosecutor for pointing it out. I was ecstatic when I saw that he had, because to me, you know, it's not false to say that people grieve differently and that maybe you wouldn't want to deal with your kids, but the way that she just completely dismisses it, and then that what we end up seeing is that the sister, you know, unprompted, walks in, has a very genuine, devastating reaction to the loss of her brother, just devastating. Just thinking about it makes me feel bad, right? I want to start crying when she says, I lost my brother. It's like devastating. But the second thought in her head is, where are my boys? Meaning Eric's sons. So the first thing she does is go into the bedroom where the boys are. And then at the same time, the police officer, which we're going to take a look at now, asks Kouri if she could bring the boys somewhere else because there's going to be a lot of traffic going in and out, and he doesn't want them in the line of fire. So she then tells Katie, goes in the room, doesn't look at the kids, tells Katie, we got to move the boys, then goes and tells her mother that the boys have to be moved, and then disappears. And then we see Katie come out of the room with the three boys, or at least two of the three. I'm not sure if all three are there. There's one in her hand and one she's holding his hand. And they go down the hallway, and I guess they go upstairs. And then Clint comes in, her husband, with her two daughters, one of whom was sick with a fever, and brings them upstairs to be with the boys in the playroom. And then Katie starts, losing it. I mean, it's hysterical. Doesn't know which way is up. But we see that Kouri just can't deal with the kids. Now, okay, you don't want anything to do, though, with your kids. I mean, nothing to do with your kids. And to see the way that Katie, her first instinct is to go right to them and to try to provide comfort and safety for the boys. And then to see Kouri just can't even look at them. I mean, she's not even, like, let's say, okay, I'm the grieving widow. I'm so overwhelmed with grief that I can't handle interfacing with my kids. I would still be concerned about them. I would be asking my mom, please go comfort the boys until I can go be with them. Or asking Katie, please just spend some time with them until I can get it together to go talk to them. But Kouri just disappears. She just wants no part of it. And she says, I can't. And then absolutely panics when she finds out that Eric's father is close by, that he's on his way, he's almost there. I can't face him. Why? Why not? I mean, it's a really odd response. It would be one thing to be upset at the idea of Eric's father and the loss that that is for him, and to just think, oh, that poor man. But her panicked reaction is indicative of, I can't face him. I mean, and good for this prosecutor for pointing it out here.
Your kids are awake. They're in that door. Yeah, she said to the left. Yeah, I think the one master bedroom. Or the master bedroom. So basically, she said went to bed at 9:30. She slept with the kids, I guess. And then she goes to bed. When she was in bed, at about 3 o'clock, moved in her bed.
We'll stop it there. We could play it for several more minutes. She doesn't immediately or otherwise run to the bathroom
No,
and throw up.
she does not.
When people make up stories, they are inconsistent in the retelling. Here, in the Orange Notebook, Kouri Richins says they make the Moscow Mule and the lemon drop shot in the kitchen, and then they go to bed and brush their teeth. Here, they drink it in the bedroom, not the kitchen. She tells her attorney that Eric was on the phone when she went into Ashton's bedroom. But Eric Richins' phone activity tells a different story. In the Orange Notebook, Kouri Richins says that Eric was awake when she went into Ashton's room. In that rambling phone call with Bryce Knutson that Chelsea Barney recorded, she suggests that he was asleep because she says when she returned to the bedroom about 3 a.m., Eric was in the exact same position as he was when he fell asleep. That means she was there when he fell asleep, not in Ashton's room.
I definitely picked up on this inconsistency, and note that this is typical with people who lie a lot. They lie in a way where whoever they're talking to, it's the most convenient in that moment. And one of the things I've been arguing all along is that Kouri Richins does not think long term. She's very impulsive. So it's sort of this mentality that regardless of what I'm doing now, I'll find some way to account for it later. Oh, I'll figure it out. I'll make up some other story later that will clear me of this lie that I'm telling now. And you see that pattern all the way through with her of lying to the person, whoever she's talking to, in such a way that's convenient in that moment to make her look the way she wants in that moment, despite the fact that that story she's telling is different or discrepant from a story she's told before.
Her story is inconsistent in the details. That proves that much of it is fake. We've read text messages throughout this presentation. We'll continue to publish some more for you to read. None of those text messages were recovered from Kouri Richins' phone. They were recovered from Eric's phone, Chelsea Barney's phone, Josh Grossman's phone, but not Kouri Richins' phone, because they were deleted. On the phone that Kouri Richins got to replace the seized phone, these are the searches. What was Kouri Richins worried about? She was worried about the police recovering all her deleted text messages. Why? They're inculpatory. They would further prove that Kouri Richins bought drugs from Carmen Lauber to then murder Eric Richins. Her phone searches reveal what she was thinking. Prison is on her mind. So is money. She's interested in the life insurance. We don't know precisely when these searches were conducted. It's just not in the digital data. We have the data we have. But we do know that she hasn't been paid out yet on life insurance. And she started getting paid out in June of 2022. And this phone she got in April of 2022. So the inference is that these searches occurred between April and June of 2022. This one's the most insightful. If someone is poisoned, what does it go down on the death certificate as? She didn't search if someone accidentally ODs. She doesn't search if somebody is dead for unknown reasons. She searches if somebody is poisoned, because that is what happened.
I really appreciated that he pointed this out, that these searches occurred between April and June of 2022. Think about that. That means 6 weeks after Eric has passed, she is literally Googling women Utah prison. And she's importantly Googling about poisoning deaths because of life insurance. She's looking to try to figure out what happens if they find out he's poisoned. Will I still get my life insurance? That was one of the major death blows for me. Major death blows. That language is so specific. Very hard to explain that away.
The payday loans particularly showed distress to Ms. Carrington. This isn't a traditional mortgage. This isn't even hard money lending. This is, give me money today, I'll give you money when you get paid at an extraordinary, exorbitant interest rate. You heard Brooke Carrington testify about the extraordinary growth and unsustainable level of growth for even sophisticated business people. Kouri Richins is not a sophisticated business person. Kouri Richins would borrow money by any means necessary. 6 times she submitted inaccurate bank statements to lenders to get money. Those bank statements reflected her business account and balances in C&E's business account. The next level of financial desperation is taking $45,000 of your best friend's hard-earned cash tips from waitressing, telling her that you are going to apply that as a down payment to a mortgage on her house where she lives with her partner and her children. Then telling your friend, your best friend, since middle school, that you applied the money to the loan, here's the deed, sign the deed, and then not filing it. And you will see, if you review that Brooke Carrington's schedule that had all the property transactions, you'll see that not only did Kouri Richins not file the deed, she took out another loan on the house. That's the loan that was foreclosed on, that resulted in Chelsea Barney, her partner, and their children getting evicted and losing their life savings. That is the next level of financial desperation that Kouri Richins was in January 2022. What interested her was the appearance of success in business, the appearance of affluence. And by underreporting her expenses, it looks like she made more money than she did, and she appeared more successful than she was. Because she cared not about being successful, she cared about her facade. She cared about appearing successful. She wanted to close on the Midway Mansion. She had no money to refurbish it, to flip it right away, to run it as an event center. But she was going to close on it. She needed money now. Doesn't matter if Eric's going to earn a ton of money down the road. That does not help her now with the Midway Mansion. It does not help her now with servicing her existing debt. She needs money now because she's closing on the Midway Mansion on March the 4th. She ultimately closed on the Midway Mansion the day after she murdered Eric. There's an interesting thought here. Did she close on the Midway Mansion in spite of murdering Eric? Or did she close on it because she murdered Eric? This is probably Kouri Richins' true plan for the Midway Mansion. And if Eric had not put most of his assets into trust, it could have happened. You have a fortunate perspective during this case in that you get to observe the defendant. You get to observe Kouri Richins. And you observe her affect with some, when some witnesses testify, and you observe her affect change when other witnesses testify. You observed that when we played the 911 call during trial, her affect was flat, no emotion. You also observed that when Brooke Carrington testified about the financial distress of her business, she was exercised, because that testimony pierced her facade. It pierced her facade of being a successful, privileged, and affluent person. It was a narcissistic injury. She was bothered because the world saw that she is indeed not a success and not affluent.
Put a pin in these comments, because the defense is ultimately going to stand up and declare the need for a mistrial because Bloodworth actually comments on her affect. But he's absolutely right. That was a narcissistic injury. That is exactly why she was animated during that testimony, shaking her head, disagreeing with the forensic accountant about the state of the business. And he has her nailed. I have to tell you, Bloodworth, I think, has Kouri Richins nailed in terms of who she is and where her mind is at throughout this process of plotting, scheming, planning, and ultimately executing the murder of Eric Richins.
1, 2, 1, 2.
Oh, you know what time it is. It's time to like this video. Like this video. Like the video. Like this video right now.
I was down.
Now for the aggravator of administration of any substance any substance in a lethal amount. The substance here happened to have been fentanyl, could have been any part of the illicit street drug that she bought, happened to be fentanyl that she administered in a Moscow Mule and a shot or a shot, but we know that's how she administered it because it was in his belly.
Now, this is important. He's going to loop back to this again later, but you hear what he's saying here. It doesn't matter if Kouri thought she was purchasing fentanyl or oxycodone or Oxycontin. She didn't care. She knows that opioids kill. So it doesn't matter whether she intended for the Michael Jackson drug or for fentanyl or thought she was buying oxycodone. It doesn't make a difference. I myself believe she thought she was purchasing oxycodone and was surprised by learning that it was fentanyl, that was genuine. Because we know she knows oxycodone kills, but you know what? Bloodworth didn't even need that detail to point out beautifully it doesn't matter.
That amount of fentanyl shows that Kouri Richins wanted Eric not only dead, but good and dead. Now, count 2, the aggravated murder. The elements are the same as count 1. The only difference is attempt. Attempt requires, as the court instructed, a substantial step. There's plenty of substantial steps from ordering the drugs to making the Moscow Mule. Here, the aggravated murder count proves the attempted aggravated murder count and vice versa.
I was on the fence about whether there was enough evidence to prove that she attempted Eric's murder on Valentine's Day, but now you're going to see how Bloodworth shows us the similarities, which I do not think came through until closing. And, you know, this closing also helped me to understand that's what the purpose of closing arguments is to try to tie all the evidence together so that the jury understands it in context. This was a beautiful showing of the purpose of closing arguments. I can't say enough good things about Bloodworth and how he handled this.
The commonalities between Kouri Richins' conduct are not coincidental. Notice that she learned from her mistake. One can season a sandwich with fentanyl. Eric can eat it, tell something's wrong, set the fentanyl-laced sandwich aside. You throw a lemon drop shot back. By the time Eric would notice, the shot was in. It was in his body.
And I think he nails this too. There's almost no doubt in my mind after he says this, she administers the fentanyl in the lemon drop shot and uses the Moscow Mule as a chaser because it has the acidic ginger beer. And by the time he gets the, I don't want to say backwash, but the taste of the shot with the fentanyl in it, he's chasing that lemon drop with that ginger beer, which I'm sure in Kouri's mind will offset the ick factor from the fentanyl.
In each case, she leaves Eric alone. She distances herself from the dirty deed. She leaves the bedroom when she murders him. She leaves the county when she attempts to murder him. Okay, the insurance fraud. There are 2 insurance frauds. Let me distinguish them, please, for you. The first one is a scheme charge, a fraud scheme. The second one is a fraud claim charge. Count 3, the scheme charge relates to the $100,000 True Stage policy. We're going to put it up in a minute. The fraud claim charge relates to the $250,000 True Stage policy. The forgery, which we will get to, is a forgery related to count 3, the scheme charge. Let me unpack them now. Okay. Different than the aggravated murder and attempted aggravated murder, I'll address all elements of the insurance fraud scheme kind of at once because they all jump out of this single page. And the scheme is quite simple. Kouri Richins wanted to murder Eric Richins, thus took out an insurance policy on his life to get money for murdering Eric Richins. Then she murdered Eric Richins, and then she submitted a claim to get the money. That is the scheme. And we know it was Kouri Richins because everything on this application for this $100,000 true stage insurance policy returns to Kouri Richins. Kouri Richins received the application because she was a member of PED-FED. The application was addressed to her at her work address, so she would have been the one to receive it. If there was any questions about it, any further follow-up mailings about it, they would go to her and not to Eric. This applicant information is all her, but the partner information is all her as well. Her work address, no email address where they could contact Eric. We'll get to the social security number in a minute. The primary phone, that's not Eric's phone. You'll see that Eric's phone is 801-792-9317. And when you look at this closely during deliberations, you'll see that was originally a 7 that she later marked up to read like an 8. She initially wrote his correct phone number, then did not want anyone from True States to call him, so she changed the 7 to an 8. So that Eric would never know that this policy existed. Now for the insurance fraud claim count 4. This is the True Stage $250,000 policy. This is the claimant's statement filled out. Kouri Richins beneficiary, Kouri Richins email, Kouri Richins address. Everything about this claim says Kouri Richins is submitting this claim. And then, like before, the fraud here, the falseness of it is she says she doesn't know where the fentanyl came from, when in fact she ordered illicit street drugs from Carmen Lauber. And indeed, later in the Walk the Dog letter, admits to asking Carmen for fentanyl. Finally, count 5, the forgery charge. We've discussed most of the forgery when we discussed count 3. But there's this without the authority to do so element. It's not a forgery if Eric gave Kouri Richins permission. The state has to prove that Kouri Richins did not sign Eric's name with permission, with authority. All of the evidence in this case proves that Kouri Richins does not ask for permission, she takes. She took with the home equity loan. She took other people's money. She's a taker, not an asker. Finally, like I mentioned earlier, Eric Richins, the evidence proves, would have put the trust as the beneficiary, not Kouri Richins. If he had given permission, it would have been permission to make the trust the beneficiary. That's the forgery charge. Let's please now turn to Kouri's motive for a fresh start at life. You heard the instructions. The state does not have to prove any motive, except for the pecuniary gain motive, because it's an aggravator. But motive explains why Kouri murdered Eric Richins, why she attempted to murder him. Motive explains a lot here. These texts at this point are familiar. The day after Kouri Richins speaks with Becky Lloyd and tells Becky Lloyd she would be better if Eric were dead, she texts Josh Grossman that she's in love with him, a man not her husband. If I was divorced right now and asked you to marry me, would you? That's the day after the attempted murder. If he could just go away, and you could just be here, life would be so perfect. We're familiar with this text. We've read it already today. I ask you to read it again. This time, replace the word divorce with the word murder. This graphic shows a juxtaposition between Josh and Eric that is insightful to what Kouri thinks about each of them. In each instance, she is texting, well, she is kind of simultaneously texting. These are laid out chronologically. She is simultaneously texting with both Josh and Eric about closing on the Midway mansion. And she's so excited she is so excited texting with Josh. I can't believe it. I want to celebrate with you. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you for always being my support, shoulder, and rock. I need you all the time. Some things I could never do without your encouragement. You have no idea how much I appreciate you. Eric tries to reach out. You want a shot? Can't. Sorry, busy. Then right back to Josh Grossman. To me, you're worth millions a year. I'm honored to be your best friend, your lover, your go-to. Life is going to be different, I promise. You're one hell of a patient person. I hate your hard days. I wish I could be there to turn them around for you. Can I try Friday? Give me a few days. Hang in there until then, please. By Friday, of course, Eric Richins was dead. Kouri had murdered him. She's right, life's going to be different. She promised him. It was. Then, 16 days after Kouri Richins murdered Eric, are we there yet? And then 1 month later, Kouri's ready for Josh to be her husband. Josh Grossman loved Kouri Richins. He believed that she loved him. Not sure that's true. You saw him testify. He was gutted. As a grown-ass man, gutted. You also observed Kouri Richins' affect when he testified. Flat.
So we will talk more about this piece, his comments about Kouri Richins' affect when we cover the defense's closing argument. But he's also saying at the same time throughout the close not to take his statements as evidence, but to look at the evidence itself. And I'm not so sure that her affect was flat during Josh's testimony. I could go either way on this because I think lawyers often will counsel their clients not to be super emotional during the trial. I can't even imagine how hard it would have been for me if Josh Grossman was up on that stand crying the way he was. It's interesting, though, that her two emotions that we've seen clearly throughout have been more on the defiance scale, right? Like, we did see that she gave us a big smile when Josh wouldn't take the oath initially. We also see that she'll make a lot of faces when she disagrees. She acts like she's surprised or outraged at some of the claims that the prosecutor is making. So her reactions are defensive. I'm not going to rest my hat on any of that because it just doesn't matter very much. I remember how people painted Karen Reed, and it was completely irrelevant. So I'm not looking at any of that and trying to analyze it. Again, oftentimes lawyers counsel their clients to remain neutral as much as possible. But in this larger context, the reason why I think he's making the argument is because it fits his narrative. The larger narrative, as I've said many times already, he does have a pretty good read on who she is and her character, who she is as a person. And he's not wrong that more flat affect is standard to psychopathy or to people who are capable of murder. I don't know. That's an argument that I have to wrestle with. Personality-wise, is what we're seeing more indicative of addiction or psychopathy? Those are arguments that are really only relevant to other psychologists or other mental health professionals that we would have amongst each other. But I think that's the reason why he's making the argument and he's rolling the dice on doing so.
The evidence proves that Kouri Richins murdered, attempted to murder Eric Richins, and that she committed 2 counts of insurance fraud and forgery. The evidence does not support any other rational explanation. The state, since its opening statement, has stressed the requirement to consider the evidence that has been admitted and not what the attorneys say. What the attorneys say, insinuate, speculate, is not evidence. Please let me show you why the state has stressed this. In the defense's opening statement, counsel said that the evidence will show that Kouri Richins had a 1/2 interest in the Willow Court home. There is no evidence of that, and indeed contrary evidence. Defense counsel said that the evidence would show that Eric was always checking Kouri's phone. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the evidence will show Eric and Kouri Richins went to marriage counseling. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the evidence will show in the few weeks before Eric died, his closest friend thought that he and Kouri Richins were the happiest together that the friend had ever seen. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the night Eric died, he and Kouri Richins had their drinks and set their cups in the sink. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the evidence will show that the cups were sitting in the sink and the nanny put them in the dishwasher the next morning and they still had fluid in them. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that Eric talked to a friend named Scott Wagner at 10 p.m. the night he died. There's no evidence of that, and indeed, contrary evidence. Defense counsel said that the evidence would show Eric unlocked Kouri Richins' phone at 10:30 p.m. the night he died, and this is the last thing that he did. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the evidence would show investigators interviewed Kouri over and over and over again about what happened the night that Eric died. There's no evidence of that. Defense counsel said that the evidence would show that law enforcement secretly recorded Kouri Richins' phone conversations for over a year after Eric died. There's no evidence of that, and indeed, contrary evidence. Defense counsel said that you will hear Kouri Richins telling her family that she purchased pain pills for Eric at his request. You did not hear that, although she did write it in the Walk the Dog letter 4 months after she was arrested. In listening to defense counsel's closing argument, please only consider the evidence that has been admitted.
From the quetiapine to it not making a damn difference if she thought she was buying fentanyl or OxyContin, it didn't matter. And he didn't even have to bring in the whole story about Kouri's mother having lost somebody to oxycodone to make that point clear. He made the point clear, to the point about Carmen Lauber's credibility being completely irrelevant because they had the GPS data. They had Kouri Richins admitting that she was purchasing drugs in her Walk the Dog letter from Carmen, right? She's trying to say in the Walk the Dog letter that she's going to have her brother tell the story that she had Kouri purchasing from Carmen fentanyl for Eric, right? So the Walk the Dog letter, he even, and I got to give it to him, he even went through the 911 call and pointed out the alibi architecture in her first few statements to the 911 caller. And more than that, he went even further. He knew that she never put the phone on speaker when she was allegedly giving Eric CPR during that call, which was super incriminating, not something that I remember hearing during the trial. He talked about that. He also talked about exactly what we spent the weekend going over, that there were differences in how Kouri, her reaction to learning the news of Eric's passing, to what it looked like when Katie found out that her brother was gone. He talked about how guilty she was, how she wouldn't even look at her children, how she treated Eric's father, the lies that she told about the medical examiner conversations, and all of the lies. I mean, those were just scratching the surface. He talked about the difference between reality and what she put in that orange journal notebook. I mean, he went through it all. He did a fantastic job laying it all out. He just went through it all on the screen, right? He had the demonstratives. He laid everything out. He took the key pieces from each and every person's testimony that was important to tell the story. And then he told the story with the timeline and all of the important details. I mean, it was all circumstantial evidence in the end, but he laid out the story beautifully. And I had said this before, and I will say it again. I think that the prosecutor had a real grip on who this woman was. I think he got her. He knew who she was. She was narcissistic. He actually says that at one point she suffered from a narcissistic injury. The defense, after the first round of the prosecutor's closing argument, objected to it, said that it was inappropriate, wanted a mistrial, whatever. At one point, the judge, who I loved in this case, actually told the attorneys to sit down because she tried to object very early on in the closing argument, which we'll take a look at. It was first of all, it was tremendous theater. Number one, if you're into live trials, this had it all, and it was a fantastic ending. And then we also had an interesting effort by this defense attorney. What do you say about this defense team, right? I think they were given a shoddy hand to play with. I will say this about them. They fought with everything in their souls on behalf of Kouri Richins. You cannot say that she did not have fighters on her side. She did. These people fought in every way they knew how. And the defense attorney who did the closing for Kouri, man, she gave an impassioned plea. The only problem with that impassioned plea is that on a number of occasions, I felt my argument for why Kouri was guilty was strengthened by what she was presenting. The idea had been, well, I'll just put on this show for everybody. And that way, when Eric does die, nobody will point the finger at me. She, of course, didn't know that Eric was going behind her back and painting her to his own family as somebody capable of murder. That's why Amy's waiting for the investigator, Woody, outside right after Eric dies, 8:30 in the morning. Detective Woody shows up, and Amy, the other sister, is outside waiting for her, saying, yep, my brother said this was going to happen. That's why they were so sure, because Eric was going back. And yes, it's true. Like Bryce says in the phone call with Chelsea and Kouri, well, you got to realize that, when Eric was upset, that's when he was going back and complaining about you to the family. Well, yeah. And that's why they were able to ultimately see Kouri more clearly than maybe anybody else, because they were only getting the bad stuff. But the bad stuff was bad enough. I mean, she did take out $250,000 off the house behind his back so she could start a business. But the worst part about that is that she was never sorry for it. And that even after Eric's death, she's telling Bryce, well, wouldn't you do the same thing if you knew it was going to make you a $12 million business real estate empire? Even after Eric's death, she's still rationalizing why that behavior was okay. And he stops her and says, well, I don't know about that. Because, yeah, it's not right. It's your husband. You don't just go behind his back and take out a $250,000 loan against your home. Right? And so that's a good example, though, of how Kouri sees the world, right? She's not responsible for anything, and she can do whatever she wants. She does not have to follow the rules as long as she has a good enough reason. This is who we're dealing with. I think Attorney Bloodworth really nailed it in terms of painting the correct picture of who Kouri Richins is. Now, one of the things that the defense took big issue with was him pointing out Kouri's lack of emotional reactions in the courtroom and making meaning of it. So they were saying, he actually did not speak to whether she testified or not, just to be clear, but they were making the argument that by calling out her reactions, her being emotional or not being emotional as she sat and listened to testimony or evidence or whatever, that was comparable to commenting on whether or not she testified or not. The judge did not agree with that argument. He explained why he didn't agree with it, shot it down, and ultimately, their appeal is on the record or whatever, their claim, their argument is on the record. And certainly, I'm sure they'll be fighting hard to appeal this on all kinds of grounds, and who knows. But I also want to point out that everything we know about Kouri Richins, if anyone's going to handle prison just fine, Kouri's going to do fine in prison. She'll live happily ever after as best as a person can in prison, because she is tough and conniving, and she's got the ability to murder, so she belongs there. I mean, frankly, right, these are her people. She'll be fine. It's not what she probably envisioned for her life, but one of the challenges, I think, is that Kouri's not, well, this is the argument, and I argue this is a completely irrelevant argument. This is the kind of argument that psychologists have with each other, right? Was she a sociopath? Does she have psychopathy, or is she more like an addict? Well, I would argue that in this case, she does feel tremendous guilt. And that's why she doesn't want to go play mommy of the year to the kids after Eric's dies. That's why she doesn't have an easy time talking to Eric's dad. So I think there was guilt. I think that's also why the relationship with Josh Grossman doesn't work out, because she did feel guilty, because she couldn't stand looking at him and him looking at her the way he was, knowing that she had done this to Eric. So I don't think she's cold as ice and incapable of empathy and compassion. I think she's more complicated than that. I think she does have more of a range of emotion, but stuffs it, compartmentalizes it, has the ability to kind of put things in their little box. So I think in the end, the fact that she felt so guilty was one of the reasons why she got caught. If she had been better at performing and acting, playing the role, if she had thought more about it, she might have gotten away with it, right? If she had been the doting mom, if she had been able to, pull off more of a credible performance, if she did not act so guilty after the fact, in the first few hours and days after Eric's death, then she might have pulled it off. But her behavior right after was so incriminating. I mean, and Bloodworth did an amazing job of pointing it out. I mean, he even points out that on the 911 call, she's referring to Eric as it. And he did a fantastic job. Like, he single-handedly changed my view of a lot of prosecutors. He did a tremendous job. Cannot say enough wonderful things about him and the job that he did today, tying all this together. And it shows, because in less than 3 hours, Kouri Richins is found guilty on all counts. It was astonishing. I was shocked. I could not believe that they came back so quickly. But to me, I don't think there's any question that justice was served here, and sentencing will occur, I guess, on Eric's, what it would have been Eric Richins' 44th birthday. It's a tragic situation all around, but, it is what it is. The right person got what they deserved today.
It is the defense counselor's duty to protect the rights of the individual, as it is the prosecution's duty to uphold and defend the laws of the state. Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in their cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
This is me reminding you to like this video, comment, subscribe, like this video.